Hello, good day. Welcome to episode number 2. I first of all want to say thank you to everyone who watched the first video, to everyone who commented, to all those who've made suggestions. It surprised me the level of interest in what I'm doing, so for that I truly thank you. In today's show, I'm going to look at the things that's the game changes in Delphi that has made it a much better tool to, or a much better tool to use for developers today to develop, software. The other thing before we get into the topics, I also want to let you know that I plan on doing 2 videos a week. One to come out on a Monday, that's today, and the next one will be on a Thursday. So don't forget, if you like my content, to subscribe, and just don't forget to hit on the post notification button so you can keep up to date with whatever I'm going to cover or talk about. The things which we want to cover today are that I want to cover today, like I said, are things in the programming language, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the multi-platform aspects of Delphi. A lot of what I'm purely from the programming side of things, a lot of what I'm talking about will be also works in Lazarus. I know there were a couple, or at least one person, who made a comment about Lazarus, and I will cover that in a future episode. I have Lazarus as well on my computer, so don't not like me because I'm talking about Delphi, because whether the form of the Delphi is Object Pascal, Lazarus is Object Pascal. If we go back to the parent, then it's definitely worth looking at. And what the first thing I'm going to bring up here, though, is I am loading up a game which I've been working on. So I'll just switch to the other window. This is a word search game that I've been working on, partly to check out what's happened in Delphi 11, and to basically see where I can take it. A word search game is pretty obvious in its what it will do. I'm just compiling the program now. We'll just have to wait. Dun, 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 dun. Is it doing anything? Let's try that again. I hate the fact that the window will pop up on my main screen. I'm not quite sure why that is, but anyway, let's bring it down about there. And we may as well, while we're here, let's just go to the code window and find something of interest here. Yeah, why not? This is a good place. Okay, yeah, it actually is. So basically, in a word search game, pretty much obvious what that is. You've got to find words, within the grid, and when you find a word, you will. Let's see if we can find on respite. It looks like a word, respite, and the word becomes, surrounded by a circle that you found it. And down below, the word gets actually crossed out there as well. If I were to use a, let's say C Builder for instance, then I could only target iOS as my other platform. Whereas with Delphi here, I can target Linux, Mac, Android, iOS. I don't know how this would work on a watch, but the point is I have more And secondly, because I don't have to worry about, if I wanted to target different operating systems, let's say Apple versus Android, I don't have to worry about switching, languages like, let's say Java versus Swift. Everything that I have, written over here, will compile for each target platform. So you can see them all here. Well, maybe hard to read, but Android 32-bit, 64-bit, ARM 64-bit on iOS, Mac OS, etc. So, and also you will see some of the newer things that have been added to Delphi, like the having the ability to declare a variable within the code, and which I think has been a big improvement, in the let's call it the Pascal landscape. But to show the features of the language of the Object Pascal language, I'm going to change projects and go into a demo program that I've wrote. It will be available on GitHub, and links to the program will also be made available at the end of the video, and links in the description. The topics the topics we'll be covering today, as I said, are scoped enumerators and record helper functions, as well as inline functions and variables. And then also there are a couple of books which are worth mentioning, and which are actually free if you want to looking for some extra reading to do. So here we have a demo program. It's your typical example of, let's say, university scores, or your scores you might get in a high school subject. Actually, the scores here, or the grades here, would reflect what would have been used when I was at high school. I'm just going to add into here, though, some values, because when you get down lower, you'll see why. 2 and okay, so enumerated types have been around forever in Pascal, and I also have I call something subject grades as being a set of subject grade. The other thing probably is worth highlighting here is the use of the letter T to designate or denote a type here. And having a set of subject grades, I've got now a set of qualifying or passing grades. The passing grades are going to be very high, and satisfactory. Consider like A, B, and C. In the old Pascal way of doing things, and let's say when I refer to old Pascal, this is something that in a book by Marcus Cantu, which I will show you a bit later. He has dedicated, let's say, a chapter of his book to the 4 phases of Delphi, which makes an interesting read. But I'm just going to call it old and new. So what we might write in, let's say, in Pascal, Turbo Pascal even, you might write something like this, where is this a passing grade? And it will be true if the subject grade is in this set of grades here. I could, for instance, even put this declaration here down in there if I wanted to. No big deal either way. When XE3 came out, that introduced a concept, if you want, of called helpers. And the way that these operate is you have a record helper for this type here, and then I can declare some functions, obviously needing an implementation. And down lower here you can see the implementation here, and so rather than having a variable passed in, you can now use self as the identifying item thing being used. So if we're passing, we can ask, is self in qualifying grades? If we want to convert the enumerated type to an integer, then we can just, use the get the ordinal value, and that becomes the result. Or in this case here, I will convert the enumerated type into a string here, and basically, let's say 0 through n minus 1, or 1 to n. Then self, just that element, the enumerated type, look up with the array, goes into the result. The other thing which I want to point out here is also, before we actually look at the program running, is you'll see that I've had to write a pause function. In the olden days when you had Turbo Pascal, there was a CRT unit, and you could just do like a read key or a pause it type function at the end of your program. With Windows, that seems to have gone by the wayside. Although Rudy has written a console unit where you could still do a read key, but for my purpose, this does accomplish the same thing. It enables you, because ordinarily what would happen is that if you were to write a console app, just in case you wanted to test out an idea, the window would just disappear when the program ends. So this way, the program runs, the program waits for you to do something, and then the window closes, which to me makes far more sense than for it to disappear. If I could have the messages output or captured by Delphi, that would be great. If anyone knows if that's possible or can let me know, I'd love you for that. So here you can see see how I use this subject grade. So I've declared a subject grade, and in actual fact, this particular subject grade, I'm declaring it within the block of code, rather than having to sandwich it between the procedure and the begin statement. I'm going to say one of my gripes, if you want to call it that, was if I were, let's say, knee-deep in a function and I needed to add a new variable in, I would probably set a bookmark or similar. Then you have to go up into the begin, and add the variable in, go back to where you were, and then write the code. With being able to just declare the code in place, it just makes things so much easier. Also, so what you can see here now is I'm going to tell you what the subject is as a string on this line here. This line here, we're going to see what the integer value is, and then we'll, because of the way I'm writing it with a plus rather than a comma, I'm going to convert that integer to a string as well. Is passing is a Boolean value, and I can convert that to a string as well, by, let's say, chaining the chaining calls, to each, by chaining calls. Which versus having to put them on individual lines, I have to have multiple brackets around things just to make something, let's say, work. For example, this bit here, I probably would have to say, let's go for the int to string ord, subject grade, and we'll just put, I think that that is a lot neater than having to write that. It's just a me thing, but we all have our own likes and dislikes, and I would love to hear what you think about these, so let me know in the comments. And when we run this program here, we'll just wait. The other thing which which I do find a little bit annoying here is I'm using two monitors, and the output window, like I said, jumps over to the other screen, and it means I have to drag it across to here so you can see it. Anyway, so you can see that my subject grade is 5, which is what a high score is. The subject, and as a string, it's very high. As an integer, it's also high, and it is passing, and I can just press the enter key and we get back. And just to show you what would happen if I did not have the if I did not set the values, we'll just run that, and I will drag the window across here. Even though I said it was very high, it had an ordinal, its ordinal position is 0, which is why you will see very low, etc. The only thing which is worthwhile knowing probably that it's still a passing grade, because very high is very high, even though as a string I might say otherwise. So anyway, let's just close that window down. So record helpers, like I said, are a huge, or a big improvement, to me at least, for writing, Pascal code. The next thing which is worthwhile mentioning is the ability to now, declare functions as inline. This is really just a hint to the compiler. But if the compiler, let's say, takes the hint, then rather than this becoming a function call which involves putting variables onto the stack, setting a return pointer, etc., it enables the code to be, let's say, become part of the the calling function. And in this case here, my max A and B, the code there's rather obvious, but the code can be optimized, and you still have your readability. The only comment I would make here is, you'd only do it for small things, not, don't make every function into an inline function, because not ideal. As I've said before, the other I've talked about already, about declaring variables within the body of the code. You can also see in this particular instance here, the type of I is inferred, so it knows it's an integer from the fact I'm using a for loop from 0 to count -1. And also in this particular function here, which by the way is only to demonstrate or to show one of the features in Delphi, is that now you can return a value through an exit statement. Let's just say in the olden days again, we would do something like this. What we got here: result equals true and exit. Rather than having to do all of that, that's this part here. All of that can be collapsed to that, and and it does the same thing. Again, nice, neat, compact code, easy to read, I hope easy to learn, and makes a big difference to, or makes it easier for the person writing code. I think that's just... Oh, the other thing I was going to mention also is generics, but to show you that, I'm going to have to bring up another screen, so just let me drag that across to here, and I'm going to mention generics. I'm not quite sure which version Delphi they came out in, But generics, I'm going to say, are a concept borrowed from C++, which allow you to declare, define, implement a class, or implement a class, we'll say, where where some type is unknown or is until it actually gets declared. So in this particular book by Marcus Canto, and we're on page 384, so I remember that one. So this is the book I was mentioning to you earlier from Marcus Cantu, is the Object Pascal Handbook. It's free. You can get it from the Embocado website. Definitely worth getting and looking at for anything Pascal oriented. As I said before, if you want to, if you do want to, there's about, what have we got here, 50 pages dedicated to generics. And somewhere down here, here we go. It talks about, we've got another, only 5 pages on the evolution of Object Pascal, which is also it's also an interesting read, at least I think so. Go back to the generics here. You can see here that in, let's say, one instance, we're going to have a key value class where the value is an object. Then you ask the question, but what if I want to use an integer? So you declare the value as being type t, t being unknown, and then he shows you 2 different instances of the class. One where you got a key value being where the value is an object, and another instance where the value would be an integer. In the old version of Pascal, let's say we wanted 2 lists, one for integers and another for maybe authors or books or something of that nature, even just a string. You would have to implement 2 lists, each with their appropriate add and delete type functions, and which obviously can, have problems perhaps, or can be more error prone if you are having to write more code than you need to. And so what generics allows you to do is to have, let's say, one block of code that can be written at runtime and does what you need it to do, for your particular case. Using my example with the integers versus strings or books, you could have one class as a list, which could handle, let's say, a book, an integer, or a string. Again, to really understand how generics work, it's best to get this particular book and have a look at this chapter. The other book which you might be interested in looking at is this particular one called Free Pascal from Square One, written by Jeff Duntman. I hope I've got that name, I pronounced that correctly. But goes way back to Ball and Pascal and Turbo Pascal, etc. The good old days. We'll put a question mark there. But it's got a lot of useful information in it as well about running, let's say, Lazarus programming. A lot of the topics which I spoke about today will work in the Lazarus environment, and for those people who watched my video, and I know there was at least one commented about this, I will do some Lazarus programming at some stage, in these videos. So if you're on the Delphi side, don't hate me for that, and because I think Delphi, Object Pascal in itself, needs more love, and that's what I'm here for. And to be honest, if you can get people who use Lazarus, you might convert them to Delphi. You never know. So anyway, this is another book that's worth looking at, and I believe this one is free to learn. And the last one to mention here is start programming using Object Pascal. I believe this one is also targeted at Lazarus users. So that just about wraps it up for today. I hope you got something out of this video. Again, I will be doing videos, following the suggestions that people have sent to me in future videos. They probably won't start this week, but they will definitely get covered. If there are things or topics that you would like me to talk about, let me know. I will make sure that information like where you can contact me will be in the description. I'll also have links to the books in the description below as well. Otherwise, like I said, I hope you got something out of this. And until Thursday this week, I hope you have a good week. Happy, good programming, and I'll see you then. Bye.